Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Newsmakers. I'm Fred Martino. The Trump administration has gotten a lot of attention for its activities related to illegal immigration. What's often overlooked, the administration is also seeking to reduce legal immigration, and taking action to reduce the number of visas granted is only one of the tactics. In fiscal year 2019, the administration wants to cap the number of refugees admitted to the U.S. at 30,000 from the already lowest number on record, a cap of 45,000 in fiscal year 2018. By comparison, Germany, a much smaller country, approved nearly 124,000 refugee applications for asylum in 2017. Today, we welcome a professor from New Mexico State University who led a service learning program in Germany and two of the NMSU students who participated, Dr. Sabine Hirschaur, Faye Yerwit, and Rainey Schauer. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you for having us, Fred.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Sabine, first off, we should say that you are from Germany. Tell me how this service learning trip came about, why you thought that this was an important way to share this issue with students, allow them to get involved. And we should say, as you pointed out to me when we set this up, service learning is not just study abroad. It's not just a study abroad experience. You get involved and you immerse yourself in the issue.
Yes, absolutely. So the idea was really that we not only, this is not sightseeing, this is not only studying something about a country, but this is really hands-on working, for example, with non-governmental organizations and to get a really idea what is integration, what is migration, how does this really feel on the ground, how do social workers interact with refugees. So this was very important to understand the reality of everyday migration. And so this is kind of hopefully what my students, this is what I wanted them to experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it was an amazing experience, and we're going to hear from the students about their reflections on this. When we were planning this television program, you told me that you saw similarities as well as differences between Germany and the United States when it comes to immigration.
Right. So what we saw when we refer to refugees, when we talk about global mobility or just migration in general, we also refer to Fortress Europe. And so there is this comparison, Fortress Europe and Fortress America. And what does this mean exactly? Who do we let in? Who really finds refuge? And so we have these very interesting similarities, and in particular what we saw this summer, we had family separations in our borderland here. We had this flood of migrants coming here to the United States, but being treated so differently than how they are treated in Germany, for example. So in Germany, they're not being criminalized. They're not criminals. It is recognized that you applying for asylum is your right. There's nothing wrong. This does not turn you into a criminal to apply for asylum. Mm-hmm. And so there is a little bit of a different framework, how we talk about migrants, how we talk about seeking refuge. And so all of this is a little different. Yet we have also very interesting similarities. We have the fear of the other. That is so true here in the United States, but it's also so true in Europe, in Germany.
Yeah, and of course, many people who are watching this show have seen I'm sure, stories about the fact that there has been a pushback in Germany against the number of folks who have been given asylum.
Right. We saw just recently on Sunday, actually, we had an election, a regional election, and we saw for the first time the far-right party moving into the parliament, the Bavarian parliament. Bavaria is a state and Bundesland, part of Germany. It's in the southern part of Germany. So we see that fear of the other that is really reflected in people are fearful of what that change does to their culture, to their way of life. Germany has full employment, has almost underemployment. They are seeking workers, they need workers. We also have the graying of Europe. We have an older population, and the answer to the graying of Europe is migration. So we have that utility, what we call the utility argument. So they need young people, they need immigrants, new people coming into the country.
As we do here in the United States.
Exactly.
And this is one of the, I think, important reasons for us to do this show, is to show that while there is pushback, and that often makes the news, there are also folks who appreciate the incredible contributions of immigrants all over the world, in the United States and in other countries, not just to the economy, but to the culture, to our understanding of each other. It is so important. Faye and Rainey, I want you to reflect on this as well. Similarities you saw, differences you saw, things that you reflect on maybe even to this day after going to Germany.
Right, well, it was an enormously impactful experience that gave me a lot to think about, and I think it was vital to be able to place the situation in the borderlands in a global context, and to consider the American legacy of immigration as the melting pot. But similarities and differences. Xenophobia seems to be on the rise everywhere as we see a global shift toward right-wing governments, like seems to be happening in Bavaria. It's understandable, the push against this perceived otherness. I would say it has a lot to do with Islamophobia, which the US is no stranger to as well. But what it comes down to is security and the fact that nobody wants to leave their home. And I mean, similarly to Southern American migrants looking for ways to support their family and escape violence, people who come to Germany, who come to Greece, who come to Italy, just want to be safe, and they're human beings. And that sounds so cliche, but that really is one of the most important things to get from an experience like this, is just the humanizing factor. Yeah. And being exposed to different cultures and seeing, okay, this is not different. We should work together and just
be welcoming.
Yeah.
Be welcoming.
And just feeding off of that, the humanization factor. It's so easy to sit there and listen to the news and hear people talk over and over again, oh, they're immigrants and all of this stuff that's just reducing people down to one word, an immigrant. And it's something that we saw in Germany, and it's something that I've seen here because we went to an event before we left for Germany to sort of get some more context for the border. We went to an event called Hugs Not Walls between the US and Mexico, and it's 3 minutes. You can sign up and you can visit with family and give hugs, and it's just so emotional, and it makes you really realize that these are human beings, and that's something that we forget a lot, and it's something I've thought about a whole lot, being here now and seeing what was going on in those camps and hearing from other people at other camps what was happening with immigrants in Germany. They're human beings, and I know sometimes bureaucracy gets in the way of that, and that was a huge factor with Germany, with the United States, and even other countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Sabine, give us a sense, as we talk about this, certainly this isn't an issue all around the world, but we have been facing, particularly for the last 2 years, an escalation in the heated rhetoric over immigration. Give us a sense of how the Trump era has been received in Germany and elsewhere, and what this is doing to our image all over the world.
Yeah, so as Germany is also struggling with that influx of refugees. So just to give people an idea, Germany in 2015, this was really the peak of that what's labeled migration crisis, but this labeling is also is not accurate. But we saw around 900, so Germany just took 900,000 refugees in 2015. So that is a staggering number. If you just compare it to us, this is more than what the United States took in within 10 years, for example. I mean, just a comparison. So this is really staggering. And then how Germany tried to deal with it, it is really from the bottom up. So many just people opening their families, their homes, their own spaces to these refugees. So it is really, in many ways, initially, it really brought the country together. And so when Germany looks now to the Trump administration and how migrants and refugees are treated here, in Germany, they're not, as I said, they're not criminalized. So they said, we really approach migration so differently. We are equally afraid. We equally have, how do we deal culturally? How do we deal with a population that, is different from ours? But
I mean, Germany is a good friend and has always been so in our modern times with the United States, and has generally had a pretty good relationship. The two governments have, but we are seeing a change now. I mean, I think that the average person is questioning what's going on here. The governments are questioning what's going on. I mean, I even had seen some video of at the UN, Germans kind of laughing at President Trump with some of the comments he was making.
Right.
This is really, to some people, extremely concerning.
Right. No, it is absolutely true. Germany is looking up to the United States, and the United States has always been this kind of moral leadership. And so now we have the Syrian conflict. So we have these people that need to escape, flee Aleppo. They go into these inflatable boats, going through across the Mediterranean. This life and death situation, really risking their lives. So many people died. I have friends and families in Germany. They actually refer to the Mediterranean as the mass graves. They said, we do not want to go on vacation there anymore because the images we see and the horror people go through, we cannot justify and then going on vacation there. So Germany has a much more intimate relationship with migration, refugees, to open its country to providing refuge because of our history, because of the Holocaust, our past, the Nazi regime. So there is not only this utility argument, what I've mentioned, that we need workers and Germany needs because of the negative population growth, it needs to grow its human capital, but it also has moral responsibility.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way, and this is why I wanted to take my students to share and to get an idea as to what all of this is and how complicated and how complex that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Faye and then Rainey, when you think about this experience going to Germany and service learning, what do you take away as the most valuable part of this?
Oh.
And I know that's a tough question.
Absolutely. Like the single
Yeah,
most important experience?
If you had to answer the single most valuable thing of this experience for you.
For me personally, it was knowing that I was useful and placing my identity in a global context and seeing like there's somewhere that I can put my skills, because I speak German and I'm a government major. I'm interested in bureaucracy and making governments work for people. And I was able to help and bring insight as, people are interested in meeting Americans and hearing our perspective, and knowing that I could contribute.
Yeah. Rainey, how about you?
At least in the context of like how I lead my life, I'm a news reporter, I'm a government major at NMSU, and a lot of my time and energy is spent on how we speak about things. And I think seeing the human factor, seeing what the German government's doing, taking into the context of how my own personal government works here in the United States, I think it's really important to be very careful about how we speak about things. And that was a huge thing that I took out of this, is just how we speak about people, about issues, about other countries even.
You said you're a news reporter. Do you want to continue that in your professional life?
I hope to, yes.
You do. Did this experience going to Germany make you feel even more strongly about that, the importance of journalism?
It really did. I think I sort of had this spark of hope in me that maybe someday I would be able to save the world and all of this kind of stuff. But I know that I personally cannot, but I know that I'm a pretty good journalist, and I know that I could go out there and I can make a change by changing the way that maybe people think about issues.
Yeah. Sabina, I shared with you that, I didn't have a chance to do this when I was in college, but as a journalist, I participated in a journalism exchange program, and I felt that this was, in my professional life, the most valuable professional development that I had outside of, actually going to receive graduate degrees. This experience, and in journalism we do a lot of professional development, but going for several weeks to Germany was amazing for me in so many ways, and affects me to this day. Did you consider that when you thought about doing this program? Did you know how impactful this was going to be for students?
Yeah, I have some of my own experiences. I did a postdoc in South Africa, so I lived for about 1.5 years, 2 years in South Africa. I did service learning in South Africa. I worked in a rape clinic in one of the poorest townships. I was in Rwanda. So actually study abroad when I was a student did change my life, and it did so much to me personally, and this is why in many ways, this is why when I came to NMSU, I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to take students to South Africa, but then we had the migration, we had that influx of migrants. We saw these pictures, going through the media globally, that struggle, the civil war in Syria, these people in these inflatables. And so this was the first time that I could help my country of birth to bring some of these challenges a little closer to young people. And
before we run out of time, I want to give both of your students a chance to talk about some of the things they did in Germany. Faye, we'll begin with you.
Okay, so I was the only person in our group that could actually speak German, and I was able to help our social workers translate some contracts for refugees where we worked. It was full of Nigerians, this camp, so they spoke English, and I helped the social workers translate contracts for like midwives So that we sat
Very
in on
important.
interviews, right? Yeah.
Rainey, how about you?
Well, at least for the camps, it was really interesting because we got to sit in and listen to some of the conversations between the counselors and actual refugees, and sort of the conversations of, well, this is what you need to do to get asylum, here's what has already happened, here's the next steps. And sometimes it was a little bit difficult to watch. A lot of these refugees were from Nigeria. A lot of them were women who were trafficked into Italy, and quite a few of them were waiting to be deported or had already been deported and come back to Germany. And it's just these people stuck in an endless cycle of, okay, we came here to Italy, we are back in Germany, might get deported back to Nigeria, but Nigeria wasn't taking back a lot of the refugees. So it was sort of this limbo that a lot of these people were in, and they couldn't do anything about it. There wasn't anywhere for them to go. It was sort of like, you can't go home, but you can't stay here. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to watch human beings not able to really have a place to be when all they want to do is go and do something.
Yeah. Rainey, when you think back on the experiences that you had in Germany, how does that affect you to this day?
I think a lot of my experiences in Germany were difficult to process right away. I think now I've sort of thought about it. I know it was a lot emotionally, watching people get thrown around, and even visiting Dachau, which we did during our time there. It's sort of a reflect back almost. It was a lot of emotions and a lot of thinking and a lot of, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. But I think right now it's really easy to think of it as sort of like, what can we do about it, and how can we stop it from happening here in the United States?
A takeaway from this, yeah.
Sorry.
So Faye, how about you? I mean, when you think about this today, how it affects you today?
It's definitely given me a lot to work with as far as my studies in the borderlands continue. I'm working on building more of a context and comparing these systems, how immigration works between the US and Mexico, and how German bureaucracy deals with migrants. So
I'm wondering for both of you, you know, if you feel you have any more of a visceral reaction when you hear some of the political rhetoric that is so, some would argue, very damaging, very hateful against immigrants and immigration that's occurred particularly over the last 2 years.
Our president has called Mexicans animals, and people cheer for him. And if that's not concerning, I'm terrified. And he's called, I'm so sorry if I'm not allowed to say this, but our president has said this, he's called African countries holes. And what our tour guide of Dachau and the Munich museums was pointing out to us is that it's not about them being whole countries or them being animals, it's that we're not. And this rhetoric that is very familiar in history, this unification of people against an other, and it's so easy and it's so toxic. And I just think people need to be incredibly careful when this language is so divisive and so disgusting.
Yeah.
My reaction is just sort of thinking back to how the German government handles people coming into the country. They have a history of the Holocaust, so when they think about the other, it's in a completely different context than in the United States. We find it so easy to say things like, you know, Mexicans are animals, because we don't have a history of like murdering thousands on thousands of people in our own country in the way that Germany did. It's a lot easier for us to separate it from the other, and we're less careful and treading about it. Mm-hmm. I think Germany likes to walk carefully, and I know that those camps are not the best, but it's a different solution than ours because of the history of the German government.
You know, Sabine, this is one of the things that I took away certainly from my trip in Germany as well. Everywhere we went, there were reminders of the Holocaust, and there was a very concentrated, effort among the government to make sure that future generations would not forget the Holocaust. This must be, I'm growing up in Germany, seeing what's happening in the US, seeing what's happening in other parts of the world, maybe to a lesser degree than in the US, but must be incredibly difficult for you.
Well, it is astounding. It is astounding to me, because if we have, we have that history, we understand the Holocaust, we understand what the fear of the other, what nationalism can do, and the harm it can do, and that we kind of, mix and do not really understand the difference between patriotism, the love for one's country, versus nationalism, meaning being exclusive, that one is superior to another segment of the population, for example. That is very scary, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah. Faye, one of the things, and I think it's important for us to close on this, that I know you feel strongly about when we talked before we sat down for this taping, is that this kind of experience that you and Rainey had is so important for us in the United States, because we by and large grow up very differently than many of the young people in Europe, with American exceptionalism being a core part of the cultural indoctrination. The fact that, of course, overseas, most of the German young people at university that I met spoke German, English, and at least another language. Where in the U.S., it may just be English. So to have that experience overseas is that much more important.
I would absolutely agree, and I would recommend this sort of opportunity to anybody who has the chance, and everybody has the chance, to expose yourself to the vast world out there. It's so hard to explain from our beautiful but secluded desert. This is vital for every American in an increasingly globalizing world. I mean, sure, we have it at our fingertips, but it's not the same as going.
As being there, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Faye and Rainey and Sabine, for sharing a little bit about this trip and about the importance of understanding the world in our little place here in the borderlands, where this, as you pointed out, is so incredibly important with our own community facing immigration, facing the issues of living in this incredible place where we have 2 nations and 3 states. So it's very important.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you at home as well for joining us. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's morning edition from 5 to 9, fresh air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2, and all things considered 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.